The race-based referendum, the so-called Indigenous voice to Parliament, continues to divide the nation. The Sydney Morning Herald reports Indigenous leaders advising the Albanese government on the voice referendum are adamant the body should have the power to advise the Cabinet as well as the Parliament, despite warnings from a constitutional law expert that the broad scope will fail to win support among Conservatives. Do you think? The questions keep mounting, but sadly there is little in the way of answers from the likes of the Prime Minister or Linda Burney. But we've got the best in the business to tell us what's what. The Australian's legal affairs contributor Chris Merritt joins us now. Chris, the more we learn about the voice, the more it becomes clear why the PM is resorting to these emotive arguments as opposed to substance.
I agree. The detail, when it bubbles to the surface, and I wish a little bit more of it would bubble to the surface, is very worrying. What we've got now is a split on the referendum working group over whether the voice should actually advise the executive, i.e. the Cabinet, ministers. This is a long time coming. About a month ago, Dennis Shanahan had a terrific interview with a very senior public servant by the name of Dennis Conran, where he said that it would be completely unworkable to have the voice advising the executive. Just think about it for a second. How would this happen? Would the voice have a representative at a cabinet meeting? Would they be given access to ministerial briefings, cabinet briefings? The minutes of cabinet? I mean, it's Greg Craven, who was in favour of the voice and is one of the advisors, constitutional advisors on this, he's put his name to concern that it would actually trigger litigation. Now, that confirms what a lot of people have been worried about.
And what is the voice? Is it a single voice, or is if there is going to be a representative or someone given access, is it going to be a committee of people? I mean, do we even have any clarity on that?
Look, the little bit of information that's bubbled to the surface, and most of this is in the Karma Langton report, it describes an institution which I would describe as a publicly funded lobby group. I mean, that's seriously how you would describe it. It's not necessarily elected. Some members might be elected, others would simply be appointed. It would answer to a subset of society. It would be the equivalent of constitutionalising other lobby groups like the ACTU or the Business Council. They're very important groups, as is the Indigenous community. But there's no case for constitutionalising any lobby group.
Well, I want to just sort of explore this whole question about this cabinet representation, because this has been kicking around. You know, would they have a seat at national cabinet? Would they have a seat at the actual cabinet? The thing that just, strikes me is that this would absolutely gum up, if you think about it, the way everything worked. Because also, if you think about it, the person who'd be representing them, would they have the same sort of, I guess, status as a Minister of the Crown if they're able to sit in those meetings? Would their staff have security clearances to see the briefings that come out of it? It seems like an incredibly difficult thing. And when we look at the Treaty of Waitangi in New Zealand and how that has played out there, and the way that has divided that country by race. We had somebody over here from New Zealand this week warning parliamentarians about it. Why anybody would go down this road, no matter how much they care about, doing better by Indigenous Australians, we all agree that that's a great thing. Why would you go for this?
I tell you why they're going for this, because of the unlimited scope of the voice. If you look at the words that the Prime Minister wants us to approve, there's no limit on the subject matter that the voice can give advice on. Therefore, they want access to all cabinet activity. If it were limited to matters solely concerning Indigenous people, that would still not be a good case for constitutionalising.
I mean, would that mean then, Chris, that they could, you would theoretically have somebody from The Voice, dealing with negotiations around AUKUS and submarines?
All that, all that. The wording leaves it open for the voice jurisdiction to be triggered on any matter that affects Indigenous Australians. Now, that's any matter that affects Australian citizens. It's intentionally, you can only read it in one way, it's intentionally designed to give the voice the ability to develop into what I've described as a shadow government. Now, it opens the doors on all sorts of future changes down the track, and it's a very, very dangerous proposal.
But a shadow government with teeth.
Well, the Prime Minister has accepted and conceded that it would be a brave government that rejected the advice of the Voice. So the Voice would have the moral and political suasion to get its way. And now what we're talking about is the ability to get into the highest councils of the Commonwealth. This is not an elected body. It represents, ostensibly would represent no more than 3% of the population. It wouldn't be elected. It would answer to a subset of society, not the general community.
Chris, you mentioned the Prime Minister's words that, it would be a brave Prime Minister who ignored the Voice. If the Voice have a seat at National Cabinet, is there the possibility that the Cabinet could be required to act on what they're told? It's more than just advice. There's a legal requirement, perhaps from the High Court, that they need to act on that advice.
I think there'd be a requirement for them to consider the advice. That would require a paper chain, that would require proof of meetings. It would slow down the business of government and expose it to potential legal challenges if the box ticking and the paper trail wasn't met. It's not a step in the right direction.